Good morning. For those of you I haven't had a chance to meet, my name is Immy, and as Lizzie said, I'm a part of the congregation here at St. George's. And it is a pleasure to be looking deeper at our Bible reading with you today. So we're going to be continuing the series on how Jesus meets people through the book of Acts and what that looks like for us now. In our reading we just heard, we meet Priscilla and Aquila, who are a married couple who not only live together, but they work together as well. We first meet them in Corinth, where they then meet the famous apostle Paul, who they are then with for at least a year. They are all tent makers, and we see them in our reading when they are traveling to Ephesus. When they reach Ephesus, they set up a church in their home. And Paul leaves them in charge as he travels on further. Now, just before we go into our reading, I'm going to take a little detour, tell you about myself. Something I really enjoy doing is watching TV. Now, does anyone know who this is that's about to appear on the screen? It's Calypso from a show called Bluey. Now, for those of us who might be a little less familiar with TV shows aimed at preschoolers, Calypso is the nursery teacher in Bluey, and there's a quote from Calypso which says this: "Open your eyes, turn your ear, notice what's happening around here." And we're going to use that as a bit of a base for our morning today. So why don't you do it with me? You don't have to get out of your seats, you can do it with your hands. So, open your eyes, turn your ear, notice what's happening around here. So let's first think about open your eyes. Going back to the Bible, we know that Jesus was born on this earth as a baby, lived for 30 years, went preaching, teaching others about God, died on the cross, and came back to life to save us. Priscilla and Aquila didn't meet Jesus in person when he was on the earth, but they met Jesus the same way that we can today, through the Holy Spirit. Priscilla and Aquila already knew stories growing up as Jews about God and how he was sending someone to save us. Then someone told them about Jesus and the Holy Spirit. We think probably Paul in Corinth. We don't know for sure, as the Bible doesn't say, but we know that it is likely that it was him, because Paul was also a teacher who had encountered the risen Jesus, learning about his life from the early apostles and then passing it on to other people. We know from the Bible and from other people's experience that we hear about people who meet Jesus in this way, and they said they see things in a different way and that it opens their eyes. So open your eyes, turn your ear, notice what's happening around here. So let's next think about turn your ear. The amazing thing about meeting Jesus is that it isn't just a one-way friendship, because through prayer we can talk to Jesus and he can talk back to us in different ways. One way we hear from God is through reading our Bibles. Priscilla and Aquila, along with Paul, would have also read and listened to the holy text together and learnt about how it linked to Jesus. They turned their ear to what God was saying, and we can do the same at home and at church. It's a bit like the baptisms that we saw today, where the families promise to look after the children and raise them in a way that follows Jesus. At home or in our small groups, all of us can read the Bible together and pray together, hearing from God what he is saying about how we can live well together in a good way, and it's not just for Sundays. One of my main childhood memories to do with God is that for a little while, once a week, we would at home get out a picnic blanket, put out a candle, have roast potatoes with gravy, which is my comfort food if anyone needs to know, and listen to some worship music and read the kids' Bible together. It would only last about an hour, but that time for me growing up, listening to Christian music and reading Bible stories, helped shape how I meet and hear from God. This evolved as I got older because doing things like this doesn't stop. It just now looks like small group or the pub with my friends or talking to people who come in for events. When we open our eyes, turn our ear, notice what's happening around here. So let's finally think about notice what's happening around here. After they turned their ears to Jesus and what he was saying, Priscilla and Aquila then noticed what was happening around them. We hear it in our reading. They were at the temple and were hearing Apollos speak, but they noticed that he only had half the story. Apollos was speaking about Jesus, he just didn't know it, because he only knew the story up until John the Baptist. Now, Priscilla and Aquila could have shouted at him, telling him he was wrong and corrected him in front of everybody. But they didn't, because they heard what God was teaching them and wanted to act in a way that was like Jesus. Because Jesus doesn't meet us in an angry way. He meets us where we are in a loving way. What they did was invite Apollos to their house to explain to him the way of Jesus and what it meant to meet and be loved by God. Because Jesus uses us through the power of the Holy Spirit to help him meet other people, and we need to be ready for that. Ready not only in our families, but with everybody we meet. Because when we meet Jesus, we don't just keep what we learn to ourselves, but we share it. That's what Apollos did. He heard the good news story from Priscilla and Aquila, and when his eyes were opened, he eventually went on to help other people around him meet Jesus. No matter our age or how long we've known Jesus, we can all be challenged to help other people meet him, no matter where we are or what we are doing. As I finish, let's take this moment to recap. You can open your eyes and meet Jesus for the first time. It might be that you've heard some of the story, but you haven't heard it all. Or said yes to Jesus and become a part of the story. We will sing again in a little while, and there will be a chance to pray. And if you want to say yes to opening your eyes and meeting Jesus, there will be some people who would love to pray with you. You can turn your ear. Maybe you've met Jesus, but you struggle to hear from him. Can I encourage you to share this with God through prayer, not just in this service, but through the week, and with the people you are close to, so that you can read the Bible together and give time listening to God in whichever way you find comfortable. And you can notice what's happening around here. Unlike TV, we don't watch God's story happen. We are living in it and a part of it. Who do you see around you that you could tell the good news story of Jesus to? Where do you need to open your eyes, turn your ear, notice what's happening around here?